Good day everybody, welcome back to the channel and to another What's This Then? Today we're having a look at Hollow Knight Silksong, the latest game by Team Cherry. Feels a little bit weird to be talking about this one, just because it kind of feels like everyone and their mom is kind of playing it already, so it feels like, you know, why would it really need a video? But no matter how big the release is, there's always people who aren't playing it, you know? Obviously there's always more who aren't playing something than there are, usually. I've actually looked up that metric. I'm curious about that statement. But yeah, I feel like it's still important to have, like, you know, sort of a critical look at no matter the release, no matter how beloved the studio, no matter how hyped the anticipation. Always gotta look at stuff and be like, hey, is this actually good, or are we just caught up in it right now? So, just here to give you my first impressions of what I think about Silksong. We'll talk a little bit about the gameplay and some changes from Hollow Knight, stuff like that. But before we jump into that, let's hop into the options menu so we can have a look at what's going on here. Not too much going on, so this shouldn't be too long in here. So, game options, you've got your language, change it to a bunch of different ones. Camera shake, on or off, I recommend keeping that on, it's a nice little bit of feedback. HUD appearance, you can do small, large, or off. I keep it on small, haven't had any reason to change that. Show achievements, so you can have them display like in the game themselves if you don't want it appearing, you know, if you're not playing this on any platform that has achievements, which I'm not sure how many of those there are. Yeah, you can just do it in-game if you want, and then turn off the, say, Steam ones or something. Backer credits for the people that kickstarted the game, because this game is actually a Kickstarter from before Hollow Knight, which is interesting. Was actually a stretch goal. Was going to be DLC for Hollow Knight until it just turned into its own game, and then 7 years later, here we are. Audio, pretty much everything you need in here. One I really like is, I love the hero voice. Well, I love being able to, given the option to turn it off and on, but personally I would say keep this on. Makes Hornet feel that much more distinct from the Knight in the first game. Video, yeah, not a lot in here. Simple art style on the game. Obviously 2D, simple art style, animated, so you don't need a ton of different visual effects going on. Or different visual options to be able to tweak. So you got your resolution, you got your full screen, borderless on or off, which is an interesting way of displaying that I've never seen before. Full screen, yes or no. VSync, normal stuff, I keep that off all the time. Particle effects, normal or low. I haven't noticed any crazy visual clutter or anything like that from this on normal, but, you know, to each their own. You may want to change this. It says it improves performance on lower end systems. Blur quality, kind of same thing, high or low. I haven't noticed any bad blur. I couldn't really tell you where this blur is really being used that much. I guess on like heat effects and stuff like that, I suppose. But yeah, it looks really good. So I'd recommend keeping that on high if you can. Frame rate cap, I put that at 240. Just always, yeah, set that to whatever your monitor's refresh rate is, or if you need to save on system resources, you know, maybe slap it down to like 60 or something. But the game runs absolutely flawlessly, as you might imagine. I have absolutely no performance issues to talk about. Screen scale and brightness, yeah, usual stuff. Controller, you can remap the controls, which is lovely. You can do that on controller, or you can do that on mouse and keyboard, which is always good to see. There you go, there's the keyboard ones. Achievements, do not go in there if you don't want to be spoiled on boss names and potential things that you'll be doing, because it just has them all and it just shows them to you. It does not hide them. I had a peek in here after about 6 hours of playing, and yeah, it was showing me just some straight up like stuff I hadn't seen. Or it like showed me a boss name I hadn't encountered yet and stuff like that, so I was like, yep, I'm getting out of there. And then you've got extras, that's just credits at the minute, but I assume maybe as DLC's added, maybe this will be a way to like start it outright if on a, you know, on a new save file or something. Not sure, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, let us jump into the game. Save file 1, you can see 5.5 hours, about 6 hours actually with like AFK time, I suppose, so about 5.5, get my tongue twisted there, of actual real gameplay. So, welcome to, this is Bone Bottom. If you'll notice in Hollow Knight we start at Dirt Mouth, this is Bone Bottom. So, I'm going to start off in the hub area, and I'll just sort of show you this sort of starting area and maybe one of the areas next to it, just because, obviously not to avoid too many spoilers, because this is one of those games that the more you can experience yourself on these sorts of games, the better, for sure. Because it's got that, as we all know from Hollow Knight 1, it's got that Souls DNA, you know, it's like someone took a Metroidvania and just took a big syringe of Souls DNA and just went out, straight in there. Yeah, so very similar vibes to Hollow Knight. Very, very cool stuff. Talk to people, you know, usual hub stuff. There's a vendor. There's this thing, which is very interesting, but we'll talk a little bit about Hornet herself first. There is more mobility off the rip than there was in Hollow Knight. So in terms of gameplay, the combat is a lot more fun, for me personally. And I'm excited to see how it's going to evolve over the game, because I'm like scratching the surface and we're already talking like, you know, very fun instances of combat. That could also be down to another aspect of it, which is because this game was originally planned to be a DLC for the end of Hollow Knight, so assuming you had beaten the base game, this kind of assumes you know what you're doing. And that's how a good sequel should start, in my opinion. Especially one that's so linked to the first one, you know. Although you could absolutely, well, I don't know that for sure right now, but at least off the 6 hours of like first impression stuff, you could absolutely jump into this without having played the first one and not be too bad off or anything like that. There are some references to Hollow Knight, but you know, nothing like too crazy so far that it's like, yeah, you need to know. But yeah, gameplay. I had a particular boss fight that really kind of showed like the movement and stuff like that. You know, you kind of had to make use of your dashes and your downward spikes and stuff like that. Your dive kick almost that Hornet has here. And just I came out of it thinking like, wow, that was just an incredible boss fight, just based on the amount of extra like movement and all that sort of stuff that I was doing. And Hollow Knight definitely did have that as well, but it was a lot more, it felt a lot more binary. You know, up, down, left, or right. Whereas this, just the addition of like the diagonal spike and stuff like that, it's just goes that extra little bit to make the combat feel just a little bit more dynamic, which is really good. But combat for the most part is going to follow the same kind of structure. You know, you got your nail, you swing it, you hit people, you do a little downward spike on their head, you've got a ranged attack. You're familiar with it. If you played the first one, you'll know the basics of how this goes. It's just a bit harder and a little few things tweaked here and there. No pogoing. Hollow Knight 1, I think a quite common strategy that a lot of people did was to just bounce on enemies' heads, whereas the diagonal, the introduction of the diagonal pogo, I guess, makes this a bit higher of a skill ceiling move. A lot easier to mess up. And makes it a little bit riskier to actually try and do, because if you miss it, you might end up getting hit. So you'll notice in the top left, we've got the same sort of UI. Similar, but definitely Hornet themed now, except there's a spool, which is like under the masks on the left there. That is kind of how we do most things. So healing in Hollow Knight was we filled up our like little meter, and then we consumed portions of it to get like 1 mask of health back. Whereas in this one, it's that spool has to get to a certain point, and then we can consume all of it with a press of the B button or circle button, and then it heals 3 masks. And it's faster. So again, there's another sort of element of the gameplay that is speedier. You know, things feel faster here. And that could be because, you know, with the extra challenge, we need to increase combat speed and game speed. Well, combat speed mainly, not necessarily game speed. Enemies feel like they still sort of all move at the same kind of pace as they did in Hollow Knight. It's just they have extra moves that make them harder. So that's another part of this as well, is the enemies feel like right out the gate, apart from the literal first like 10 enemies you find, which aren't really there to pose a threat. They're just there for you to hit and learn how to hit things. There we go, nearly fell into the spikes. Yeah, the enemies feel more difficult. You can't, it feels like you can't just run in and mash the attack button and have success. A lot of the enemies feel like you have to pay attention, which is good. And there's also a lot more enemies that do 2 masks worth of damage, which is really throwing my muscle memory, because I'm really in this mindset of like, right, I'm at the beginning of a Hollow Knight, I can just sort of run in, I can smack stuff, if I get hit, it's whatever, because I can just heal, because I get healing by hitting enemies. And then suddenly an enemy will hit you with 2, and you're like, oh, I forgot about that, and then you're dead, you know? So definitely harder, Definitely harder than base Hollow Knight at the beginning. Which is, like I said, it's a good thing. That's what sequels should kind of be about. You'll notice enemies are they're dropping 2 resources. So there's these red beads, and then there's also the, like, fragment little bits there, little silver shiny bits. So this game has 2 currencies on the go. Rosaries, which is the red one, only drop from certain enemies. Not every enemy drops them. And then you've got the shards, which seem to drop from just about everyone. The shards have a cap. So I'll show you. I'll go into the menu here. So you can see at the bottom left here, the shards have a cap. Now I've upgraded this, so it's 500. It starts at 400 by default. And these are basically used for a multitude of different things. So you have different people will ask you, like, hey, can you donate a certain amount of shards, and I can use them to fix things, for example. And then you've got your rosaries, which these are your currency. Like, these are just the geo from Hollow Knight. Pretty much work exactly the same, except you can turn them into, like, necklaces, and they kind of act like the souls from a Souls game, or the runes from Elden Ring, where they're, like, in your inventory, and then you can pop them and, you know, get it back. And I found various ways of actually turning your rosaries into these. So I could, like, spend 80 to turn them into a rosary string, so that's 60 that are guaranteed in my inventory forever until I use them. You know, so you lose 20, but you gain the ability to not lose them. Which is interesting. Some people, like, you have to buy that, and some people you have, some areas I found where you can just sort of do it yourself, which is interesting. Now I suppose I'll show off the UI, actually, now that we're in here. So this is our inventory. You know, on your left, this is, like, everything to do with your character. There's a few things here I don't even know, like, what is this? No idea. Still discovering, so that's the joy of a Metroidvania, especially one infused with a bit of souls in there. Discovery, part of the fun. But yeah, you got your nail, silk, this will be upgraded. This sort of how much of your abilities you can do, essentially. And then your mask shards, I assume this is going to act like Hollow Knight, where I get enough shards of this and my health goes up permanently, sort of thing. So looking forward to getting my 3rd or 4th one of that. I think it's going to be 4, because that was 2 there. But then we hop on over to here. This is our new Charms UI. Now, this is one of the biggest departures from Hollow Knight. So before, it was you had a charm, and it took up a certain amount of slots, and you had a certain amount of those slots to use. And you kind of just had to, you know, move them about, put stuff wherever. This time they've gone with a bit of a different system, which is themed sort of charm slots. So you'll see on this part here of the screen, each of these has, like, a corresponding logo, like this little blue one, this yellow one, this red one up here. Those can only fit into the corresponding areas, like, around here. Now, I don't know if this is going to expand, but initially this seems a little limiting. Like, whenever you first start the game, this can seem extremely limiting, especially because some of the first things you find are all these yellow ones. Or at least in my experience they were. And it'll be like, oh, well, I have to choose now. Because there was another, like, 2 charms that I found that people sold that were also these yellow ones, so it was like, oh, I'm going to have to, you know, really make some decisions here. But as I've gone through the game, they've sort of been expanding more and more into, like, okay, so you're getting a wider variety. They've got this red one up here. You got these blue ones now. And it feels like this is a response to Hollow Knight having kind of... There were definitely a set of charms that were just, like, the best ones that you would put on and just never take off. So I'm wondering if that's in response to this, having these themed ones now. So now it's if you want 2 really strong ones, kind of unlucky. You're going to have to pick. Now you're going to have, like, a utility thing, and you're going to have a support thing, and you're going to have a, you know, a damaging thing. And I think this is better for overall game balance, but this is going to be one of those ones that people might have a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and think, I don't like that. You know, initially. I think initially people are going to be very negative on this system, but I think as the game goes on, people are going to appreciate this system a lot more. One part of it that is actually very unique is there's tools now, which I'll show you that real quick. So basically, if I hold up and hit R1, I have, like, throwing knives. And that's, like, a tool I just, I think I found it in, yeah, a little area. Just find it. and it's added some extra sort of like attacks, and I can swap that out. And you'll see in the top left, it's using that red bar. And then every time I sit at a bench, that'll use the shell shards to sort of craft them again, I guess. It does it automatically for you, which is nice. So we've got some like utility tools that are going to like sort of modify our combat repertoire, I guess, is the best way to sort of describe it. So it'll be interesting to see what other ones I get of this. This is the only one I find so far. There are other ones that I could get, but they require like resources and stuff to make, like someone can make them for me. So I just haven't looked into those yet. But this could be very interesting, or this could be an aspect of the combat that most people probably like just aren't going to touch. Like, is this going to be a similar idea to consumables in a Souls game? Where it's like, yeah, this would be really helpful in this situation, but I'm going to stick to the base moveset that I have all the time because I know I can rely on that always. You know? Is it going to be one of those sorts of situations? I know I'm very much like that. I'm very guilty of like getting a ton of consumables in a Souls game and then just never using them because just hit with sword, do job, good. But yeah, that's the system. It'll be very interesting to see what people think of this over time. And then this is also an interesting part. So this is kind of like our tasks. This is our quest log, essentially. You can show completed or hide them. So in Hollow Knight, there weren't really quests. You kind of find people, they would have said some stuff, you know, and maybe you would have helped them out if you could or something like that. Maybe, you know, people would have asked stuff of you, but it wouldn't have been like a tracked quest. Whereas in this one, it very much does have a tracked quest. So I picked up this one, which is to find lost fleas. And there's this one, which is to get 100 bugs into your hunter's journal. Now, those are fine, because you're just playing the game, and you'll find those as you go. That's pretty typical stuff. You know, it's like normal Hollow Knight stuff, except we've now just added, like, a tracking thing for it, for people who maybe didn't like not knowing. My one major kind of gripe with this is that there has been some quests, and if I show you, Garb of the Pilgrims. This just required me to go kill 12 pilgrims and get their garbs. And again, you can just sort of do this as you're going, but you can also just go sit on a bench and respawn enemies and then run back out and just like kill them over and over again and just farm that quest. And just like the very idea that I can do that adds some artificiality to it, which is something I never felt Hollow Knight had at all. Like, obviously it did, it's a game, the whole thing is, but how a game portrays that sort of stuff and how it shows it to you and displays it is a major component of how that sort of stuff feels to actually, like, do. So, it's a bit weird to see in Silksong now that there's quests that are just straight up, like, fetch quests, you know? It's something I really was not expecting. It's not like the end of the world, it's just a surprise to see, you know? Yeah, most of them haven't been like that. Most of them have just been like, you know, hey, can I get some stuff here? And just as you're exploring, pick it up there for us, would you? Yeah, that's not too bad. Oh, big rock. So yeah, the platforming is pretty fun as well. Hornet can do a little ledge grab, which is interesting. You can see here. And you can also kind of jump from it as well. So I'm expecting the platforming sections in this game to be quite involved. So I feel like with the limited platforming abilities of the Knight in Hollow Knight, like they weren't bad, but the game definitely wasn't designed with the platforming in mind. So whenever it did throw like platforming challenges at you, it could make them tough. Like it certainly could make them tough, like timing and all that sort of stuff. But it could only go so far, because it only gives you so many tools. Whereas this game is giving us, it seems like a lot more tools, and I am scared for what comes later in that regard. Especially the diagonal downward. That's like the biggest one of this whole thing. This completely impacts combat, and this completely impacts platform potential. So, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with that. But yeah, it's a damn pretty game as well. Of course it is. I mean, like, the art style of Hollow Knight was absolutely gorgeous, and the art style here is absolutely fantastic as well. One thing I will say that I'm really enjoying more about the art style of this one, though, is the actual variety of the areas that we're exploring. A lot more varied right out the gate than Hollow Knight was. Makes it a lot more interesting to explore. Obviously, in this one, it seems like the theme is we're going to ascend, whereas in Hollow Knight we were descending. So they're playing around with that in a few areas, which is kind of fun. So far as well, let's see, we'll speak on boss fights. Boss fights, there's been a good few boss fights so far, actually. All of them have been fun. None of them have felt, you know, particularly bullshit in any way. Felt fair, entertaining. Visually, they're all gorgeous to look at. There's one particular... There's one fight with a character who I think is going to be this game's Hornet. Or could be this game's Hornet. We'll see. Maybe a bit of a rival. That fight was incredible. Loved that fight. Really showed off the dashing and the you know, making the most out of your mobility and stuff like that. Really enjoyed that one. And then I suppose the music as well. The music has been gorgeous. Absolutely no surprise there. Hollow Knight has one of the probably most gorgeous video game soundtracks just out there. Just absolutely delight to listen to, and this one is no different. It feels like this one has more variety, though. I've gone from, you know, sort of the melancholy piano of Hollow Knight to the strings that you could be hearing right now. I'm not sure what the volume will be like on that music for you guys, but and then there's an area I found later on that was very Witcher. Really reminded me of Witcher, like exploring Velen, which was interesting. I did not expect. So really enjoying the variety of the music as well, and yeah, just look at this area, all the particle effects, like the lava and stuff. Oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, I think that's really all there is to say, to be honest. It feels weird because it's one of the biggest releases, you know, in a long time, or one of the most hyped releases in a long time. And it feels like I should have so much more to say, but Hollow Knight has never really been a terribly deep game. Just an incredibly well-crafted one, and it deserves the praise it gets for sure. The original Hollow Knight, and it seems like this one is more Hollow Knight, but a step up, you know, in pretty much every way, except for, I would say, those quests. I feel like the game just didn't really need those unless it's going to do something with that, like, later. So it'll be interesting to say. So the charm system, that has the biggest potential to kind of be a step back, but I have a feeling that one's going to pay off later. And then the quest system, it feels a bit derivative. It feels like they just didn't need it. It feels like a weird addition. I guess, you know, people liked it for more direction, because I know that was one of the criticisms of the first Hollow Knight, was people felt a bit directionless. So I guess that is sort of a way to combat that. So I can understand where it's coming from, and it's not outright bad. It just feels a little out of place for this type of game. But yeah, you can pick this game up on pretty much every platform. You know, as long as the servers are back up and running again after that launch day. That was pretty crazy. It took me about 2-3 hours or so to actually buy the game, because they didn't do pre-orders for whatever reason. I guess they just wanted to build that hype even more, make people think they were going to delay it again. And I suppose we should talk about the price as well. The ridiculously cheap price of like £15, $20. Ridiculously good value if this game is going to be anywhere close to the scope of the first Hollow Knight, which I have to imagine it's going to exceed that, given how long this took to make. And they had like no restrictions on making it. So yeah, absolutely ridiculous value for money. I would say if you like the first Hollow Knight, you've probably already bought this, but if Metroidvanias seem interesting to you, and maybe you've never gotten into them before, and you've never played the Hollow Knight 1, I would say to give this game, or even the first Hollow Knight, a go. Give it a chance, because these don't really act like traditional Metroidvanias. They do and they don't. They just, like I said, they have that bit of Souls DNA just kind of like injected in there, which make them feel a decently bit distinct from other ones. And some people are going to love that, and some people are going to hate that. Which is fair enough, you know, it's just not for everyone. Or it's absolutely your thing. But yeah, like I said, £15, $20 on every platform. I've been having a good time. I'm going to get back to streaming some more of this. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'm getting awfully tongue-tied this video. thank you very much for watching, and I shall catch you guys on the next video. Goodbye.